Hello,
Hello.
Murughan. Hi,
Hey,
how are you
what's up?
doing?
I'm doing
I'm
good.
good. Awesome. You were in the backstage when Ajit was speaking, so I hope you like the session.
Yep.
Awesome. So, Murugan, we have you as the next speaker, and we are really glad to have you again for yet another event for us. So, Murugan, can you give a quick introduction about yourself, and meanwhile, you can share your screen?
Okay, sure. I'll do that.
Awesome.
Let me unplug the other monitor.
Sure.
There you go. Can you see my
Yeah,
screen?
it's good. Yes, yes. You're
Okay,
live,
all right.
Murugan. Awesome.
Okay, can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So hey everyone, I'm Murughan Palaniachari, and I'm an assistant director. I work with EY, and I didn't want to prepare slides. Uh, we want to go open source, right? So those slides just sort of showing outside of the slides. So I've been, working on the industry for more than 13 years now, both on the development and operations. Spending more time on the operations in from past 4 5 years, and I'm in love with Azure DevOps. So it's one of the powerful tool, where you can do end to end things. Start from your requirement gathering till your support, right? End to end you can actually manage with the Azure pipeline. So this is what Azure DevOps. So that's just a quick introduction about me. I'm authoring a book. Okay, so one is on blockchain on AWS. I love blockchain too. So where you can actually writing about how you can build a blockchain solutions on AWS cloud for the business solutions. And the second book, which I'm actually started to write on, is on the Google Cloud. How do you build serverless containers, running a serverless containers on Google Cloud. So that's the second book which I'm working on now. So for today's agenda, so I want to talk about how Azure DevOps is so powerful that you can actually use it for any language or any platform. So Azure DevOps is actually a online based tool that also has a on-prem as well. So it's online based web based tool where it provides, using Azure DevOps you can actually build end-to-end application, right? So it provides multiple options. Like, one is Azure board. So Azure board is where you actually manage uh, your agile board or a scrum board, you Kanban or any of the agile, basically where you how you manage your work. And the second thing is it provides Azure pipeline. So this is what we are looking into today's session, right? Azure Pipelines is actually a service where it helps you to build the complete CI/CD. So when we talk about CI/CD or a DevOps is nothing but basically the DevOps is a culture, right? How we need to work together so that we can actually go faster to the market, we can get the feedback faster, and it's all a continuous learning, right? But at the same time, we also look for the automation, right? Once as a developer, once I'm done with the development, and from there till pushing it to production, everything should be automated, right? So one of the beautiful sentence it says, human beings are here to solve the problem, and computers are here to do the repeated task, right? So let's leave the repeated task to the computer, and then we solve the real world problem. So Azure Pipeline helps us to automate your building your application, testing your application, provisioning infrastructure for any of the application, and also deploying your application to that environment which you have provisioned. Yeah. So that's what the Azure Pipeline is. And Azure Repo. So there are a lot of places where you can actually keep your code, right? It can be a GitHub or a Bitbucket. Uh, any other thing, right? Similarly, inside Azure DevOps, it provides you option like Azure Repo, so where you can actually keep your code, right? In fact, Azure Pipeline can integrate with any of the other source control as well, version control as well, and it also has its own that's called Azure Repo, and this is a Git based one. It also has a TFS one, but it's now everyone uses Git, and it provides the Azure test plan. This is for your the manual sorry, all the test suits or the test management. And Azure artifact, this is to have your artifacts, like instead of, let's say you are using a npm as your artifact repository, right? If that is an offline, and then your pipeline might not work, so instead within the Azure DevOps you can have this artifact so that it runs faster. And extensions market, let me show that extensions. So one thing here is using Azure DevOps. It's not only for Azure. Don't misunderstood the name Azure. Okay, so using Azure DevOps pipeline, you can deploy to any cloud or anywhere. So for example, these are the extensions. There's something like in a Jenkins you'll have a plugins which is similar to this. Now let's say I want to deploy to AWS. I can actually search for a AWS plugin. Right, there is AWS plugins out there. Right, you can have them, and let's say you have something else. So you have the IBM Cloud plugins. So a lot more, right? So, or you, let's say you want to provision infrastructure through Ansible. So there is an Ansible plugin. And you say you want to use a Terraform, and there's a Terraform plugin. So this is your marketplace. This is where you actually go and download all your plugins, right? And this can be even dashboards as well. If, for example, I want to have some dashboards, there are a lot of dashboards, yeah. So you can use CICD dashboards and things like that. So that it provides lot many plugins, marketplaces. All right, this is just a quick overview of the Azure DevOps. Now what we will do now is I'll talk about now the pipeline, right? So when we talk about a pipeline or a CI/CD, so that has two phases. So one is uh, your build pipeline. So that is where your continuous integration pipeline. Okay. So in this continuous integration pipeline, you do things like you build the application and you test the application and you run the let's say if you're using a Sonar Cube for your code quality, and then you run your Sonar Cube analysis test. And then now the security is so important that we also use check marks or Veracode for any of the security scanning. We do the security scanning step, and then finally we create the artifact. So the artifact is ready for the provisioning, right? So that is called your CI pipeline. So let me just pick any one here. Just go to the resource. So now this is how it looks like. And now to log into this, you need to dev.azure.com. This is where the link is. And once you log into this, and you will create an organization. So organization, inside the organization, you can have many projects. Now OSS Days 1 is one of the project. Now if you want to create another project, you can just say click on the create a project. Now let's say OSS Days. I'm just giving us some name, and you can make it as a private or a public, and you can just create it. So once you create this project, so this is where you can actually have your own agile board and your own pipeline and your own repo and everything. So this is like a project. Now I'll go to the OSS Days 1 project. So here we can see in the board section, this is where you will see all your agile boards. And I'm interested in the repo, Azure repo. Now, if you see here, and this is one example of a Go application. And using Azure DevOps, you can actually deploy to any platform or any language. So that's what my intention is. So I'm going to pick up multiple languages and show that. So now this is one sample Go application. You can see that here. This is just a simple website, the Go application. And now we always talk about infrastructure as a code, right? We don't want to log into Azure portal and provision any environment. Instead, we should provision infrastructure through code, right? So this is the ARM template. So this ARM template, provisions a web app, to deploy our application. Now I have the code, everything is there, and this is just the web application. And this is my pipeline, and inside the repo, and we still need to follow all things like you're creating a pull request, your branching policy, and all those things it provides. Now for example, here I can when I click on the branches, and I can go here and I can give the branching policies, like where I can say if somebody need to make a change, and that should go to review, like minimum review should go. Minimum I can set 2 or 3, some numbers we can say, and then we also mention the requester should not be approving it, and all the branching policy you can update it here. And pull request, obviously, this is where here you can see all the pull request. So whenever developer is making a change, so he'll have to create a pull request, and then the pull request need to be approved by some the colleagues, and then only then it can actually go to the it can build a pipeline. It can do the next step. Now we are interested in the pipeline. So in the pipeline, we can see this. I have created a CI pipeline. This is your build pipeline, right? Let me just show you what are the steps will be there in any pipeline. So whatever in the old school days, whatever we used to do with the shell or the command prompt, we do it with the UI base, same thing like a Jenkins, right? So what I'm doing here, I'm saying, okay, go pick up my code from Azure repo git, and this is my repo name, and pick up from the master branch, and you can select other branches as well. And like I mentioned, you can also pull from GitHub, a subversion, Bitbucket, and other Git as well. Now, for this Go application, for me to deploy it, I need to build the application, right? So as a first step, I need to mention, okay, which version I should be using. So this is a task. So adding a task is very simple. We click on the plus button here, and we search for what we need to do. Okay, I need to do a Go, and just say add, and then we come here and we select whatever options we need to be added here. Likewise, I've added these many tasks. As a first task, I'm saying, okay, use the Go version. In the second one, I'm saying, go get the details. And third task is to build the Go application. I'm just saying, build. The command is build get test custom. Custom is where you can pass the custom arguments. And once the build is success, I need to archive this file. I'm just using this task called archive file. Once the archive file is done, the next step is I'm copying the ARM template, right? Once we go to the CD, the continuous delivery pipeline, we need to provision the environment before we even deploy, right? So I'm just copying this file into the drop directory, the staging directory. And finally, I'm publishing the artifact. So now the artifact is available for release to be picked up. Now I'll go to the releases. Now in the releases, you can see that it will show how many releases are here, and then what is the status. And you can see that here, the green tick mark, that shows it's a succeeded. And let me click on edit. So this is where here I'm saying go, pick up from the latest version of the previous whatever the CI generated artifact. So once we pick that and we create a stages here, so I'm deploying it to dev environment. So in the dev environment, I'm having 4 tasks, right? So my artifact is ready. For me to deploy the application, first thing is I need to have the environment ready, right? So for that, I use this ARM template task. So here I'll say I need to connect to the subscription here, right? So otherwise, see, Azure DevOps and your Azure cloud is completely two different things, right? We need to establish a connection to that. So that you do it with the service connection. So in the project setting, when you go, and let me just quickly show that. So when you go to project setting, so there's this service connection. So this is where you create a service connection. Now, I want to connect to Azure, right? And I select this Azure Resource Manager. And then say I want to connect through service principals, and I enter the subscription name and detail, and this connection will be created. And whenever I want to deploy to Azure, and I can use this particular service connection. Similarly, so for example, let's say when you're working on a Sonar Cube, right? So you'll have to create a service connection for a Sonar Cube. Or let's say if you're working on some other, it provides a lot of other things, right? On a Chef and Docker host, a lot more. So these are the service connections you'll create. Now I have created these service connections. Now my CD pipeline knows that, okay, I need to connect to this particular subscription, Azure subscription. And I'm saying, okay, what is the resource group name, and what is the location, and an artifact, and then giving the location of my ARM template file is available. So, and this task will actually provision it. And the second one, I'm saying stop the service. This also creates a web app, right? And I'm deploying the code to the web app, then I'm running it. Now, once this pipeline is ready, we say click release, and it actually creates a release, and we can actually see that. So what happens here is when I click on the release, so usually when we run it, we need somebody to execute our code, right? This is a Go application. All the Go related plugins need to be installed. So what Azure DevOps does is it has a self-hosted Microsoft hosted agents, which is actually running. So those agents will have a inbuilt Go or a Python node, and everything is installed. So every time when we create a new build, it actually creates a fresh virtual machine, and then it starts to install all the dependencies and everything. Now we can see that here it creates a folder called D colon A. A is like an artifact folder. So likewise, it creates multiple folders and it executes. So this is how the line one by one all the steps executes. Now let me show this thing. Right now, we are people. We might be new to Azure DevOps, and okay, how do I get started? Right? It looks. I know it can do a lot of things, but I'm looking for something easier to option. Right? So what you can do. This is very. I just love this one, and when you log into Azure portal and select search for DevOps Starter, right? You search for DevOps Starter, and you click this, and here this will actually give us the basic template, basic pipeline, and everything for your selected language. Now, let's say we just looked at Go. Let me look at maybe Ruby. Yeah. So I say I want to Ruby, and I'm clicking on next, and yeah, Ruby on Rails. Okay, this is a web app container application or Linux web app. I'll keep it Linux web app. Then I need to give the project name. I'm just going to give the same name. Okay, OSSJS 4. So what it actually does is it creates a new project for us in my organization. It will just take like few minutes, less than 5 minutes. You will have everything ready. So I'll show you already which I provisioned now. Now, for example, OSS days 2 is one what I provision. Once you actually provision that, okay. So once you provision, the beauty here is now this is the Python application. Um, so what it does is it takes the sample code and it uploads into Azure repo. We can see that the code has been uploaded here. Um, sorry, this is a Node.js application. I'm talking about multiple languages here. And it also created a build pipeline. So now we can see here for the sample application, it creates a build pipeline automatically for us. Yeah, and see this in this is the containerized application, a Node.js application. So what it does is it creates a container registry, it builds an image and push that image to the container registry, and it installs the Helm chart, and then a lot more, and copy the ARM template and a lot more. And if you go to the releases, we can see that it uses Azure CLI to create the cluster, and then Kubernetes to create the namespace, and obviously to deploy the entire application using the Helm. So how this helps is like when we're starting new, which we don't know how to use it. So this will create your basic template, and after that we come here and then we modify the code, or we modify the code and we modify the pipeline, and basically we customize the pipeline based on our need. So it's that powerful to get started with any language. And not only that, right, it also deploys your application. um, Now it created a application, right? You can actually open that website and it actually deployed everything to you. Now this is still in a progress. The one which we created now, just now, but this one is which language I chosen? I think Ruby. Yeah, Ruby, right? It has actually created the pipeline, and the build is. If you see here, the build is run. It is green. It's successful, and its release is happening now. And once the release happened, it will also deploy. All right. So this is so powerful. Now, initially, so yeah, so this one, right? This is how it shows when you actually run it. It will show what are the steps ran, and you can click on the each steps to see the debug information and what happened. When something goes wrong, it will show in red, and then you can actually read through this what actually went wrong. Now we talk about pipeline as code. Like basically, we are talking about everything as a code, right? And whatever I showed you, that's like your classic editor way of doing, right? But what we are interested is, sorry, pipeline as code. So let me show this. So pipeline as code is basically where you write everything as a code. Now for the same pipeline, what you saw in the UI, I'll show that in the pipeline as code. So Azure DevOps uses YAML to write a pipeline as code. Now I'll select this. This is my Node.js application. Now what we are doing here is you just create a file called Azure pipeline.yaml, and we are saying okay, trigger from the master branch. And for me to run this, deploy this application, build and deploy this application, I need a variables, that is Azure subscription, web app name, and environment, and all the values. You can pass the variables here. When you have too many variables, you should use a library, so we can actually create a library group. Now after that, I have two stages here, right? So for that, I enter like a stages here, and this is my first stage is a build stage, and the second stage is my deploy stage. The build stage, I would say okay, I'm creating a jobs, and my first job is a build job, and the second and inside the job, and I'm having the first task where I'm building the npm install, and you can execute any script as well, not only those tasks. And next I'm archiving the file. Let's say that here now you want to add a sonar cube step. So what you actually do here is you go here, very simple to add, right? This is, I just love this. Now usually when you write all the scripts, right, so you click on the show assistant and look for sonar cube. Now let's say prepare analysis sonar cube, and I select okay, the sonar cube, I've created the service connection. I give my project keys, let's say sample one code. I need to create this projects in the sonar queue for me to work, and then I just boom enter, and you see this. This is so beautiful. It makes it so handy for you to add any task. And similarly, in the CD pipeline on the deployment task, I come here and I'm saying deployment stages. I had another task called Azure Web App. This again looks similar, like where you look for this Azure, yeah, Azure App Service Deployment task, and you just select the service connection, and you select the app name, and boom, done. So you get the code here. So everything is there. Now again, running the pipeline is this looks same. There's no difference. Just run the pipeline, but while running, you can still mention that this needs to go to pull request, needs to be approved. All those things you can actually manage it. Now I'll show you another pipeline where I have a Java application. Now I have run so many pipelines here, and you can see whenever it fails, it shows in red. And you can see here that this pipeline I'm actually deploying to development environment, then I'm deploying it to QA environment. Now, one thing what we okay, before that, so once we pipeline is run, we can see beautifully, how many unit tests have run, how many failed, what are the environments we have created, lot more things. You can have the plugins, and this gives you a lot more functionality. Now, let's say that I want to put some approval process to deploy to staging environment. For that, what you can do, go to the environment, then I select this particular thing, then I click here, and then I say approval and checks. So here you can configure that, for if anyone want to deploy it, that should require an approval. Without that, I cannot go, because you may have a release manager who should approve it. Then you can check that. Now, for example, here I have the approver. I've added my name as approver. He needs to approve it. Only then it can be deployed. Or another option, another beautiful thing is, um, before even I'm deploying, I want to invoke some Azure function, because that is triggering something else, right? You can actually do that using Azure invoke function. You can even do invoke a REST API. Some API also you can invoke. You can do a lot more customization here. Now I'll show you how you can actually create a brand new pipeline. Now you click on the new pipeline, and I have my code in my GitHub, and it will show it. You need to authorize it. It'll show what are the applications are available. Then I would say, okay, select this Python code. Then it will give me what it does is, it looks at your code and it understands, okay, looks like your application is about trying to deploy to web app, and I'm giving you these are the options you can select. Maybe I would say, okay, I want to deploy this to Linux web app, to Azure. Now, the moment I select this, and it's going to ask some question like which subscription you want to connect to, and I say, okay, I connect to this subscription, and it's going to ask me to log in. And then I need to create my web app. So, okay, I have created a web app called PyFlask. I click on this, and believe me, I didn't have any pipeline yet, right? And this entire pipeline is being automatically created by Azure DevOps itself. What we are seeing is the same steps, right? Your build stage here, and then your deploy stage here. The deploy stage, we are just deploying this Azure web app, and we are provisioning here, and we are saying which Python version. Then again, we just say save and run. So yeah, so so this is it. That's it I have for today. I know, and I'm running out of time. Um, so to conclude, this is actually a very powerful tool. Okay, the Azure DevOps, where you can actually use to deploy to any languages and any frameworks as well. Now here, okay, that's okay. So you can actually run to any environments as well. I just show one example. And then where is that? So basically, you don't need not to use only Windows as your platform. You can run your application even for um, Mac OS, or even for Linux an agent as well. Yeah, I was able to show this one. So you can run this with a Linux and a Mac and a Windows. These are the platform supports what Azure DevOps provides. So feel free to play with this, and the DevOps Starter is a good way to start with, and where you get to learn a lot. And if you guys want to learn, like about more on this, and there are a lot of learning paths have been created. It's a free learning paths, and for example, if you look for AZ400 learning path Microsoft, I just love this, and this will also help you to get the AZ400 certificate as well. And here we can see that this gives you free courses where you can learn end to end. You'll have to spend more time on this, but then you get to learn everything about DevOps and Azure and Kubernetes and things like that. Entire pipeline can be built. Okay, Rohit, I think good, right? I don't take much time.